Hi Cobain, everybody else. First off, what I want to say, Cobain, is thank you genuinely for your video. Why? Because even though it was about 10 minutes long, it was actually very pithy. There was a lot of material to get through. You got through it fairly lucidly and fairly powerfully. You put your points very well. So I thank you for the video. Hopefully I'm as pithy as you. Right, now on with the business. Got some notes here, I've written. Hopefully I can even read my notes. Now you offer 5 sort of proofs for why Jesus rose from the dead. They are: Jesus was crucified, empty tomb, Jesus appeared to his disciples, Jesus appeared to James, Jesus appeared to Paul. Now, judging from the comments on your video, you might well not say that these 5 things completely, conclusively prove that Jesus rose from the dead. But I think that's just playing with words, because the reality is you believe it enough to stake your soul on it, right? You know, you're a Christian, so clearly you believe it beyond a reasonable doubt. So anyway, let's get on. The first 2 proofs you have are really to sort of establish your line of argument, so I won't spend much time on them. You say Jesus was crucified, we can show this historically, and you say there was an empty tomb. For the purposes of this argument, I'm willing to accept those 2 points are true. So let's look at your other 3 points. The key points. Points 4 and 5, what I would say is they're the same point. I mean, James was a skeptic, Paul was a skeptic. So your point is that some skeptics saw Jesus rise from the risen and therefore converted. That's not 2 points, that's 1 point. 2 witnesses to 1 point. So it's not 5 arguments, it's 4. Having said that, let's actually deal with your arguments. Now, you made some very strange points, I have to say. You said Jesus appeared to James and Paul, right? And you say James and Paul converted because they saw the risen Jesus. But it wasn't an hallucination, because being skeptics, they wouldn't want to see the risen Jesus. Now that is incredibly, I mean, that is completely fallacious, because what you're saying, and you say it elsewhere as well in the video, is that people only hallucinate what they want to see. I guess like an oasis in a desert. That's completely crazy. I mean, ask anybody who's had hallucinations. Not all hallucinations are pleasant. In fact, a lot of them, perhaps even most, are very unpleasant. People very often don't see in hallucinations things they want to see. They often see things which are disturbing and which shake their sense of reality. So I don't know where you're getting this crazy notion that people only see what they want to see in hallucinations. Of course, there is another point to make, and that is that you know, it's possible to proclaim your skepticism for something, and in fact even be a skeptic, but actually deep down want to believe. I mean, Ted Haggard constantly bashed on about homosexuals, how evil they were. He was seeing a fucking gay prostitute, so clearly, whether he accepted it consciously or not, clearly he had some gay urges, or or he was bi-curious at least. So what I'm saying is, the fact that someone's skeptical of something doesn't mean that deep down they don't want the opposite to be true. But anyway, that's a complete aside. Don't take that to be my case, because the reality is people don't just hallucinate what they want to see. That's a ridiculous idea. As for the whole hallucination thing, you say that the 12 saw him, and it's impossible to have a group hallucination. Well, it's not impossible to have a group hallucination. It's a very well-known phenomena. I mean, you and I have discussed this before, or well, we tried to. I raised the point. I wasn't sure about your response, Cobain, but or should I call you Tommy? I don't know. But anyway, the Lady of Fatima in 1917 appeared to a few kids, and in fact the Lady of Fatima sent a miracle so that everyone would know the visitations were true, and the miracle was the miracle of the sun. Now the sun spun around in circles, it changed colour, it dropped from the sky, it zigzagged around, it danced, according to most witnesses. Now, some people say there were 70,000 witnesses, some say there were about 1,000, some say there were about 40,000, some say there were about 100,000. Jesus, but the most accepted, commonly, widely quoted figure is that about 70,000 people saw this miracle of the sun. But even if it was only about 1,000 or so, that's far more than 12 people. But because that was in modern times, we actually have the ability, or then, to know that that didn't happen. In 1917, nowhere else in the world did the sun do these extraordinary things. So what? We've got 2 suns now, one appearing to Fatima only. It's insane. You clearly can have group hallucinations. Now, you may say it's biologically impossible, etc. But the reality is, if you've got people are people. All people share a common nature, right? We're all human beings. Certain things produce hallucinations, and certain hallucinations are likely to be produced bearing certain factors in mind. Now, if you've got a bunch of faithful followers who completely believe that Fatima's coming, that has spoken to these children, these were the people who were there mostly. There were some journalists as well, but when you've got a crowd overwhelmingly made up of people who believe anyway, and who believe that these miracles are possible, who are so primed and worked up and credulous as well, I'm not surprised they started to come out with similar things. That's one point. Another point is that people's memories are very fragile. It's a fact that people often misremember the past, often in their own favour. And when you've got people seeing these incredible things, they know that's like talking to each other, going, oh, what's going on? Oh. And before long, people would subconsciously have altered their stories to make them slightly closer to each other's. And there are other lines of reasoning we can go across, but I'm limited there. I'm aware there's a time limit on this video, that sort of demonstrate that actually group hallucinations aren't impossible, as you just dismiss outright. They're quite possible, in fact. So I don't know what that argument was about. Oh, stolen body. I'm not sure I completely understood your point there, Cobain, because I don't mean this to be rude, I'm honestly not trying to be funny, but you were mumbling a bit, and I do that sometimes too, but it was difficult to understand what you were saying about the stolen body theory. I mean, what you seemed to say was, one, it doesn't account for his subsequent appearances. Well, lies, hallucinations, group hallucinations, etc. account for that quite easily, actually. And your second point regarding the stolen body was the Jews had said the guards had fallen asleep. I don't understand that. I mean, that would be. I mean, if they were asleep, someone could have nicked the body. So I'm not really sure what you're saying there. It's possible I misheard you, because you were kind of. I couldn't quite hear you properly. You were mumbling a bit. So this just leaves one of your arguments left, which isn't complete garbage, and that's the Jesus appeared to his disciples and many of them died for their beliefs. And you say, we know they believed that Jesus rose because no one willingly dies for a lie. Well, that's rubbish. I'm sorry, if you can't imagine that, you've got a very poor imagination. What if I know someone who's committed a crime and I say I did it because for whatever reason I believe that they shouldn't go to jail or get executed for it? Maybe they're my son, or maybe they're a great leader of a movement, and I think, shit, I should take the rap. What if just generally I believe in belief? What if I believe, consciously or subconsciously, in belief of a certain proposition, not in the proposition itself? Dan Dennett talks about this quite a bit. Maybe people believed in belief in Jesus' resurrection, and that is why some of them lied and died for it. I'm not saying that's actually what happened, I'm just positing likely explanations. I mean, the fact is there are loads of things your mind can imagine, situations and scenarios where people would in fact die for a lie. I mean, it's not, if you can't imagine that, Cobain, then your imagination is flawed. People will die for a lie. People do die for lies. What if they didn't know it was a lie, as it were? They weren't lying, but they believed it. They actually did believe it. In that case, of course, then that doesn't say anything. I mean, Muslim extremists blow themselves up. Despite what some people say, they're not mad. They believe the holy book, and they're not hateful. A lot of them are. A lot of them aren't hateful. A lot of them believe they're saving the world from descending into the hellish chaos of unending torture. Because if they don't act in accordance with God's wishes, things are going to go shit-shaped. So people can die for things they believe in. That's not really proof. The only compelling argument that you made is that no one dies for something they know to be not true. But to be honest, as I've just demonstrated with 2 examples, and there are others you can think of, it's quite easy. People can and will and do die for things they know to be untrue. So yeah, I think that's about dealt with it. If I've missed any points, sorry, but yeah, there we are.